Our word for today is wash. Wash is our word for today, taken from our first reading from the second book of Kings, chapter 5, all about Naaman. So Naaman is the army commander of the king of Aram, and he was highly esteemed and respected by his master, for through him, the Lord had brought victory to Aram. Wait a minute. Who did Aram have victory over? The Israelites. Again, for through him, the commander of the enemy of Israel, for through him the Lord had brought victory. But valiant as he was a leper. Now, the Arameans had captured in a raid on the land of Israel a little girl who became servant of Naaman's wife. And she said, if only the master would present himself to the prophet in Samaria, she said to her mistress, he would cure him of his leprosy. Who is the prophet that she is speaking of? Of course, it's Elisha. And so here's the thing. She had been captured in a raid during the defeat of her own people by the Arameans. And now she's speaking to this man who led that raid, who was in charge of that victory, who was responsible for that victory, as we're told in the scriptures itself. She tells him, go to the prophet and he'll make you clean. She has a sensitivity for him, even though, I mean, we could just imagine what happened to her. She lost her family. She lost her community. She may have lost family members right in front of her eyes. We don't know, but we do know that she was taken from a place of familiarity to a new place of servitude. She was free and now she's a slave. And yet she says to his wife, go tell him this, go see the prophet Elisha, because of her concern. Now, Naaman goes to his king, and the king writes a letter to the king of Israel. Then the king of Israel gets all nervous because he's afraid that he's basically signing his own death warrant with this head of the army coming to him for a cure. Well, he wasn't coming to him for a cure. He was coming to the prophet that he might be cured, according to the words of this young girl. And finally, he makes his way to the house of the prophet Elisha. And after all this pomp and circumstance, after all this letter and all this money and all this stuff that the king had sent along to ensure that Naaman would be cured, the prophet Elisha doesn't come to greet him. He just sends a message out to tell him, wash 7 times in the river and you'll be made clean. And he's incensed, he being Naaman. Incensed. How in the world? One, he doesn't come out and greet him. How does he not do that? This is Naaman, the mighty Naaman. He should be quaking in his boots and happy to do anything he can to help him, of course. And so he doesn't come out to greet him. Not only does he not come out to greet him, he tells him to do a very simple thing. And Naaman says, why couldn't I have done that in the river over here? And no, because that's not what the prophet said. That's not what the word of God that came to the prophet that was declared to him dictated. There was a clear dictation. Go down into this river and you will be made clean. He did it. He came out and his skin is like that of a child, we're told. And then he says at the end, there is no God except the God in Israel. That's it. The proclamation of the authentic God, the only God, and the dispelling of any other thought of any other God is what comes about. Comes about by what? Through a very simple following of the instructions that were given to him. He did it. Brothers and sisters, what is our application? We always want it complicated. We want to complicate everything. Sometimes God has a very simplistic road for us to follow, and we choose a more complicated one because we are convinced we have to do difficult things all the time for God. It has to be absolutely gymnastics and all that. And sometimes it's just not. To obey, Jesus says, is better than sacrifice. We are called to obedience like Jesus, who went to the cross without even opening his mouth. Obedience, brothers and sisters, that is how we are washed clean, like Naaman. Wash, our word for today.